I just want to thank you so much, Felix, for your wonderful questions. I've been on a lot of different podcasts, and I appreciate the challenging pushback and the thoughtful probing to the questions because it does bring out something.
All right, Coach Lee Hopkins. So good to see you again. We had a pretty awesome conversation the other day, so I'm so happy to see you here and doing this. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch any of the other episodes, but what I try to do with this podcast is showcase to other people who my guests are, what they do, and how they can help them. So let's get right into that first question. Who are you?
Who am I? Well, I'm Coach Lee Hopkins. I'm a social connections coach. I help people make more meaningful relationships in their personal and professional life. So the meaning is whatever it means to you. So family, friends, business, coworkers, what do you want those relationships to mean to you?
That's beautiful. And I think those social connections is something that is so important for our lives, not just on the professional side, but on the personal side as well. And yet, it is something that we really aren't taught, right? We don't go to school to learn how to
Yeah.
do social connections, how to network, how to be a better friend, a better partner, a better father, a better mother, right? We don't learn any of these things. So tell me a little bit more. How did you get into this space? What motivated you? How did all of this begin for you?
Well, all of the things that you had said about how we didn't learn how to do it, I didn't learn how to do this and connect with people authentically. And we even throw the word around authentically and real connections and friends. And what are those? Really, I didn't know. I didn't know how to connect with others. I didn't know how to be a good friend. I didn't know what a good friend was. And when I would look around at the world, and this is me as a kid, and look around at the world, and you, of course, you look to the adults because they've been here longer, and you say, "Hey, how do I do this?" And they're just like, well, just go be yourself. Uh, it's not working. It's not working. What else you got? Well,
Right.
you just need to love yourself. Uh, that's not really helpful. And
Yeah.
so, just armed with those little pieces, I went through the world trying to figure out how do you connect. And I found that there was nothing that really says, these are the steps. This is the way to do it. And a lot of people were looking the same way. So that inspired me because I struggled with it to figure out exactly what it was. And for me to figure out that, I needed some actionable steps. So now I teach people to do that.
I love it. And I can so relate to even the questions that you posed there, right?
Hmm.
The whole idea, just be yourself. And for me, it was always like, well, I don't even know who I am. So how can I be myself?
Right.
Or love yourself. And it again goes back to that first question. I don't even know who I am. So how can I love myself?
Hmm.
And, it really comes from the fact that the people, all right, our parents, our forefathers, those elders, most of them haven't figured this out either. And so we're just perpetuating
Hmm.
a bad cycle of terrible interhuman connections when really these interhuman connections is where the magic happens in life, right? That's really what the magic sauce is in this people connections. And
Hmm.
I truly love that. So tell me more about your insights. So you were struggling with that, as was I, and as are millions of people out there on a daily basis, maybe even billions, who knows.
Hmm.
So what were your insights? What did you come to find that actually helps people with these quintessential philosophical questions?
It's a really great question because all I found is that what they were saying, the people in the past, the history, the family members, the adults that have been here, they are on to something. Loving yourself is very important. Understanding yourself is very important. But what I've discovered is how to do it. Like, how are we going to step by step? And they've also said, be vulnerable, be yourself. That's what they mean. But how do you be vulnerable? A little too much. One of the things that I did was I am a transgendered man, so I transitioned from female to male. And as I was learning more about vulnerability, I thought, oh, I need to be open as possible. I need to just let the gates open and let everybody see my pain and my suffering. And I needed to reveal the deepest things about me. And that's what's going to make a connection. So what I do is I help people understand there's a dial to it. Some people can understand you deeply. Some people do want to understand deeply, but others they don't want to and they're not interested. And you show a little bit of vulnerability to see which person you're talking to. And so to share my story really quick is that I was struggling to make friends, as I said. I went to therapy and I learned more about my feelings, emotions, and I learned more about positive intentions, putting that positivity out there. And so I had an idea that I would go to an event and I would make one friend. That was my goal. That was my mission. Sure enough, I go to this event and I meet one person. I start chatting them up because that was my mission. And I wanted to be vulnerable though. And remember, I'm talking about sharing the deepest of me because that's what's going to make a real friendship. And so I wanted to be careful with it though. So I started off the conversation asking about LGBT stuff. So what do you think about the LGBT? Is it okay? And we're like, yeah, that's fine, no problem. And I was like, okay, great. What about transgendered stuff? Because this was around the time Caitlyn Jenner had come out. And so I
Okay.
was like, oh, okay, well, okay, cool, no problem. He said he's never seen a trans person before to me. And that's like, okay, then I thought, this is the opportunity, Lee. This is where I didn't get the training. Right in my head, I was like, this is opportunity to share with them, be vulnerable because it seems like they're going to be okay with it. And they have curiosity and I can answer some questions. So then I share with him, I'm trans, and he freezes and he runs away. And I never see him again. Just
Wow.
stopped talking to me in mid conversation. And what I learned is that there's a dial, and I know people have been out there and they've done something very similar where they shared a little too much, a little
Hmm.
too soon, thinking that that was going to bring you closer, but it just kind of ruined the relationship.
Yeah.
So I've learned to tune that vulnerability a bit.
And that makes sense. And thank you for sharing that part of your story. I know that with today's political climate, that is definitely something that you either get an incredible amount of support or you get shunned and stigmatized, right? I mean, there's nothing in between, unfortunately, in that world.
Yeah,
Um,
but also Felix, I mean, pineapple on pizza is also just as divisive for some people.
yes, yes,
It's just as divisive. Just to say that we all have something like that about us.
right.
It's not
No,
just
I absolutely agree. And what I was actually going to try to say is, with that vulnerability, what it really comes down to is for us to be open and curious about other people.
mm,
The transgender movement, the whole LGBTQ area as a whole seems foreign to most people because most people don't understand anything about it. It's not their world, and so it's a foreign concept to them. Something that is maybe a little bit more relatable, I think, is religion. Right? If you think about it, here in the United States, we're predominantly Christian, and so anybody who's not Christian, is someone that's looked down upon. And I think Islam is one of those great examples, right? We
yeah.
assume Islam is a terrible religion, that
Hmm.
Islamic jihadists, all they want to do is kill everyone. When
Yeah.
in reality, Islam is actually an incredibly peaceful religion, right? And if
Hmm.
you truly understood the religion, you would know that. But because it's an outside thing, it's not part of your in circle, and you're not aware of it, and you're not open and curious about it, you're failing to understand things from the other person's perspective, right? I think that is just something that's more relatable to most people because that is something that comes up, every week, right? Which church
Hmm.
do you go to versus, like which transgender surgeon do you go to, right? I mean, that's not a question most people ask. And I'll tell you something. I'm a surgeon by background. One of the chief residents I was with in my surgical training, she now does a lot of gender surgeries in Florida, and she's incredibly prolific, and she's absolutely amazing at it. And even just following her on Instagram has really opened my eyes to a lot of the insides of that world because I'm not part of that. I'm not in the LGBTQ community. I have some friends, but yeah, it's not my circle. So
Yeah.
it's something that
Yeah.
I don't know enough about, but I'm curious enough about to say, look, I'm not here to
Hmm.
tell you how to live your life because let's
Absolutely.
be honest, I don't want you to tell me how to live mine, right?
Right.
So, yeah,
Right.
I'm not going to stand on my high horse here and say you can't do this just because I don't think it's the right thing to do. I don't care. You do whatever makes you happy, right? But it comes from a place of curiosity, I think, that a lot of people are lacking, which brings me to the question here. Why is that? Because as children, we are naturally curious, right? We're asked questions. We want to learn about the world. We have to learn about the world. And yet as adults, we lose that curiosity. We get so set in our ways. This is how it is, concrete thinking, no way out. Why did we lose that curiosity and how can we get it back?
Well, I think from my own personal experience, and the reason why I struggled with connecting with people because I lost that curiosity. When I was younger, I was surrounded by people who didn't have the curiosity. So as a kid, you have excitement and interest in things, and you go and you bring those to the adults. And what we're really looking for is a reflection of our feelings right back to us. So look at this. I just found this rock. It's so beautiful. Look. And we're looking for someone to be like, wow, that's amazing. What do you like about it? Stimulate that curiosity instead of, put that down.
Yeah.
Or maybe you start picking up hobbies and interests to you and you start sharing them with people and you're like, they're not going to like this. So I'm going to keep that to myself. And for me, what I ended up doing was getting really frustrated that there was nobody curious about me. So I just couldn't be curious about anyone else. I
Yeah.
just didn't know how to do that. I just want to be upset because you did something great. No one's looking at me because I'm doing something great, feeling comparative and less than. So I think that's why we get into that phase. And you look at the adults and you're like, well, that's what it means to be an adult. When you get older, you're just going to go work. We already have some systems set out for us where we go to school, we graduate from college, we pick a major, we graduate from college, we get that white picket, or we get the fence, or the not the
Yeah,
fence
the
yet,
white
but we
picket
get the
fence,
house,
sure.
the white
Yeah.
picket fence,
Yeah.
and the 1.25 kids. We
Right.
get all that stuff, and then we have a midlife crisis and so forth. But it's all been planned out for us, and that's what we just kind of stick with.
Yeah. No, that is so true, and those same people have that midlife crisis for the same reasons that
Yeah.
transgender people or people from different religions or different skin colors or speaking different languages or whatever reason that
Mhm.
you are different than whatever circle you're comparing yourself to, get stigmatized and chastised, right? And it comes back to what we were saying earlier: is that these generations upon generations haven't figured this out. We don't have the training, the schooling, the socialization that makes us open and curious. And just like you said, if I'm not receiving the love and attention that I crave, well, guess what? First of all, I don't know how to do it. Then I'm not being shown how to do it. So how can I even do that for someone
Mhm.
else? But there's also a little bit of that feeling that, well, if I'm not getting it, well, then you're not getting it either, right? There's a
Yes.
little bit of that involved as well. And what's interesting about all of that is, I'm still in the middle of reading The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate, and he talks a lot about these very influences and the impact they have on our chronic health conditions, and how all of these little things that are traumatizing. And I want to use trauma very cautiously here, because it is also overused and stigmatized and misused in many ways, and that's why I'm also using these air quotation marks here. These traumatic lifetime events have a profound impact on our health down the road. And many chronic conditions could actually be caused by some of these lifetime traumatic events in our history. It's a fascinating book. I really it's one of those books that I really highly recommend to everyone to read, because it opened my eyes to a lot of me and where I come from and why I think the way I do and why I
Mhm.
am the way I am, looking back at my own history, my own childhood, my own rearing and whatnot. And I think it's something that really is eye opening to anybody who opens that book. So highly, highly recommend it. But we got to break that generational cycle, which is why I'm so excited for you to step in and do that. But I'm kind of curious here. Your inability to make friends. This is really more for curiosity here. Did that change at all as you went through your transition? Was that a problem of the old self, or was that also a problem in the new self? And then you figured out the problem. Did your transition have any impact on that at all for yourself?
So when you say transition, I there's two of them that come up for me, and there's the physical transition, and then there's this emotional transition. This realization that I am someone else, if that
Yes.
makes sense. So
That's
the
that's a good
physical,
question, and I want to be clear here, since you
sure.
brought it up. I'm talking about the mental and emotional transition, because that precedes the physical transition, right? The physical transition is just the later manifestation of how you feel on the inside. It's the inside stuff that matters. So I want to be clear on that. I'm talking about the mental and emotional transition that you first went through.
Well, the mental emotional transition happened after I realized the physical thing wasn't working. Wasn't
No,
going to work.
absolutely. But you
So
don't go through the physical transformation first, and then you go through the mental and emotional transformation, right?
right,
Right.
absolutely. So
You have that realization first, and then you do the physical stuff. So that's what I mean. It's like the realization that, you know, you identified more as a male rather than a female. When you went through that phase in your life and you really came to terms and came to peace with the idea that, you know what, I actually should be male and not female, right? When that happened, how did that impact your ability to make friends in that whole story of yours?
It didn't really change anything.
Okay.
It didn't really change anything. Everything changed once I discovered more of a physical, a mental, spiritual, emotional change.
Okay.
The physical stuff was I still had the same kind of fragmented relationships as I had before, and that's when I had a realization that, oh well, there's something else that I need to change, because for several years, even the physical thing of moving from place to place to place, when I became an adult, just about every 15 months, I moved for 15 years, just figuring that I'm in the wrong space. I'm in the wrong space. And it's a physical change. I'm looking for the right people. I need to be somewhere. And then I thought, oh, it's me physically. I need to make that change. But it still didn't work. It didn't work. What changed, what happened for me is that I realized that I have feelings. And
Yeah.
that might be a wild thing to say. That was the biggest change, is I really do have feelings, and all I've been doing for my entire life is just shoving them down, acting as if I'm not happy about anything, because if I do share my joy and excitement, somebody's going to hurt me. If I do share my anger and frustration, somebody's going to tell me I can't be, or cheer up. Or if I'm sad, they'll tell me to cheer up. If I'm afraid, they'll tell me get over it, it's not a big deal. And so it felt painful for someone to tell me that I couldn't have my feelings, so I was just going to be like, I don't have any. And then I go out there in the world and operate on an autopilot and do everything I can to avoid really accessing my feelings. And lo and behold, that is the thing that really will connect us. And for
Yeah.
me, connection is the demonstration that someone understands how you feel. If they really understand that you have been hurt by their actions, then they will not do the thing that has hurt you, because they understand that feeling that you're experiencing because of them. And so I wrap my head around it that way. And I'm constantly thinking about how I feel now. I'm constantly in touch with them. I'm constantly looking for other people to share how they feel with me. And that was the only reason why I was able to connect. I had to really get over that fear, recognizing first that I have feelings and that other people also have them, but also being vulnerable with the feelings. And for
Yeah.
me, vulnerability, all it is just sharing how you feel. That's it. Just share how you feel. Joy, sadness, anger, fear. You share that. In fact, I teach something called strategic vulnerability, where you share just a little bit, and it helps you feel a lot safer out there. So if you feel like you can't connect with people, I want to share this quick technique with you. It's strategic vulnerability to access your feelings. You know your feelings. There's four that I like to point at. There's joy, anger, sadness, and fear. Those are the ones. And the ones you want to connect on is the joy, because we love joy. It's the
That's
most
right.
exciting and attractive. And what I imagine, when you open up and you share just a little bit, that's your light peeking out just a little bit so that people can see it. And so the thing that you share is joyful and important to you. It has to be both of those things, because if it's not important to you, it's small talk.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
That's a
If it's
really
not
good point.
important to you, it's small talk. Yes, and there's a little more to this. The whole technique. I'm going to share a whole technique. Your audience will get the whole technique for this. You share something joyful and important to you. It could be a hobby, like playing board games, or maybe a habit that you have. You're a vegan, and it's joyful and it's important to you. So you share that. And what next is you watch for other people to respond, because this is you shining your light. This is something that's really interesting and exciting, and you want people to notice about you. So you're looking for two things. One, curiosity, as we talked about. You
Yes.
want people to look for you. It was like, oh, what do you like about board games? Oh, why are you a vegan? Or what have you? What benefits have you had because you're a vegan? What inspired you to do that? Those kind of questions. You want to know more about you and your journey. What got you to here this today? The second thing you're looking for is congratulations.
Mm.
If you share something that's important and interesting to you, and it's a joy to you, like maybe you booked a spot at a restaurant that you've been trying to get into for several months, and you share that with someone. Congratulations. I know it's been really difficult for you to get to that place. I know how badly you wanted to eat there. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Something exciting. And it's not super big, it's not really intense, but you're just checking to see if they're even curious or capable of sharing your joy. And if they're not able to, So these are two things. It's never failed me. If you're looking for curiosity, congratulations. If they're not capable of showing you those two things, when you share your joyful and important thing to them, you get to think twice about what more you're going to share with them. You
Yeah.
think twice about that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that is beautiful. I really love that. I want to come back to one thing that you said though, and that is, if somebody knows that they hurt you in some way, they're not going to do that again. And I think in general, I would agree with you on that. But I have
Mm-hmm.
come across many situations in my lifetime um, where whether that's in some interpersonal relationships, families, friends and whatnot, that in my social circles, patients of mine that I've had over the years, um, there's been a lot of or it may be a lot more. It happened a lot more times than I ever envisioned it would happen
Mm.
as a younger man growing up. A lot of times when a heterosexual couple finds out that one of the two may not, in fact, be heterosexual, what do you do at that point? Because whoever is realizing that they're not heterosexual is going to invariably be hurting either their partner if they're going to step out of that relationship and explore some other avenues, or they're going to hurt themselves if they're going to stay in that relationship and dedicate themselves to something that they don't actually believe in or feel is really in alignment with them. So
Yeah.
and that comes
Oh,
back, again to even your experience with the LGBTQ community, which has a lot of people that are repressed in previous relationships. That
yeah.
maybe when they do come out and are open and vulnerable about their actual sexual orientation, invariably will hurt someone in the process, even though they don't want to. So, what's your experience with that, and how can that be? How can that all be synthesized, and how can you go about that in ways? How can we change society in ways that hurt doesn't happen?
That's a really so. This is also a wild question. No more world peace, everybody. World
Yes,
peace.
right.
So I appreciate the question, and I struggled with that for a bit because I've been told that I'm responsible for other people's feelings. I've been
Mm,
told that, and I believe it for a very long time. That, oh, you're making your mom sad, or you're making your dad sad. This isn't what we wanted for you. You have to do the things we want you to do the way we want you to do them. Well, guess what? It is
me
my
too,
life.
by the way.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is my life, and that's for everything that happens. So my intention is definitely not to hurt anyone when I do something that brings me joy. For example, I'm thinking about myself and my relationships with other people. If I do something that brings me joy and it harms someone else, or someone else is feeling frustrated or sadness, fear, they feel something by my actions, they're responsible for their own feelings. They're
Mm,
responsible for that, and it's not my responsibility to do anything to change them if it's going to be at the expense of myself. In fact, I can't change their feelings. It's on them to recognize why it's so painful, and handle that. So in the case of, the hetero couple who one of them discovered that they'd like to do something else and be with another person, uh, then they have to recognize, or the person who has been left, they have to realize that they have the pain and it's theirs, and they can't change the other person. They really have to go sit with that and make it their own. But demanding someone else change or be different, it just causes pain for everybody involved.
right.
Really, that's how I go about thinking about life. And and those people were super quick. Those people who I care about, I consider their the impact of my behavior. I consider that, but it's never at my own expense. It's always in alignment with what I'm doing. And if they have feelings that aren't in alignment, then I can help them process it, but I'm not going to change it.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. The only person, this is something that I try to teach my kids all the time. You cannot change anyone else. The only person you ever have control over in this lifetime is yourself, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
includes your feelings and emotions. That's the tricky part, because how do you teach someone to be in control of their emotions, right? How do you teach a 6, 7, 8 year old, how to control their emotions? It's difficult, right? You can't. These are difficult things to put into words, because at that point
Yeah.
they don't even fully understand everything. But I want to push back a little bit on something.
Mm-hmm.
um, because I want to hear your perspective on that, because it goes back to that interpersonal relationship that we had talked about at the beginning of this episode, which is what you specialize in right now.
Hmm.
If we are not responsible for other people's feelings, right? If your hurt really is just something that you're feeling, but I did not cause, why do relationships even matter? Why do we even bother with relationships? Because relationships are, whether those are romantic relationships, platonic relationships, just friendships, work relationships, right? It doesn't matter. Whatever person to person connection you're going to have is not all just roses and rainbows. There will come a time when something doesn't go the way one person wants it to, and that person will get hurt because of whatever the other person did. But that is only because we have that relationship. So yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
you're right. That yes, I see your point that I'm not responsible for your feelings, but
Right.
at the same time, if I'm not responsible for your feelings, why do I even bother having that interpersonal connection with you?
Yeah, so I enjoy this question a whole lot. I think that connection is a demonstration that you understand how I feel about my experiences. And so if I do something and it hurts you, I'm going to hear about how I may have hurt you, and we can talk about something that will change. The demonstration is that I hear the impact of my behavior on you, and you know that I know. You know that I know. We both know that you were hurt. And so we get to talk about what to do in the future. We get to talk about what to do in the future with that. If I decide that I do not care, then the relationship ends. If it's that important to you, because we have the desire for someone to understand how we feel about our experiences. And if you don't get it, you're going to often try really hard to make somebody understand. And if you're yelling at them, you're screaming at them, shaming them, trying to get them to do the thing that you want them to do, that demonstrates that you were hurt. So, like cheating on someone, instead of telling you, look, I feel really hurt that I was cheated on. You cheated on me. I feel really hurt about that, and you never do it again because you know how painful it is to me, and then they just never do it again, then fantastic. But that's not really how we communicate. We go out and we cheat on the other person
Yeah,
to demonstrate the pain that has been caused by you in the first place. So I
right.
want you to feel just the way I feel, and then it just creates more chaos. But we want, bottom line is we want people to understand how we feel about our experiences, and if we can use our words to express that in a clear, kind, and concise manner, even for the most painful experiences, we can get a better connection so that we can really know if that person cares to do this for themselves and disregard my feelings.
Yeah,
Rather, being careful with the language. But um, I think we have relationships to really tie up and answer that question about why we have relationships in the first place. We really just want somebody that knows that how we feel is real and legit, and they get us and they validate that feeling for us. I don't want to feel alone. I want somebody to understand me.
yeah. And it's that reactivity of saying, well, you cheated on me, so I'm going to cheat on you so you can feel the same thing that I was feeling. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a false argument anyways, because right, because again, it goes back to
Yeah.
what we were saying. Your feelings are your feelings, their feelings are theirs. If you were hurt, it doesn't mean they were going to be hurt if you do the same thing.
Right.
It's one of those things where on a more basic level, right? With my kids, for example, we have a 3-year-old in the house, and the 3-year-old will just run up. And he's the only boy; everyone else is girl. So he will walk up to one of the girls and take a toy out of their hands and just run off and think it's the funniest thing ever. And obviously, the girl, his sister, at that point gets hurt and is upset and is screaming at him. And as a reaction to that, she might run into his room and steal one of his things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he doesn't care, first of all,
Right.
and second of all, just because he did something that wasn't right doesn't give you the authority to do something that isn't right either, right? It doesn't open that door for you to now say, "Oh, I'm now I'm allowed to do that," right? It doesn't work that way. These are two completely separate events, and people tend to combine them and make them as one when they're really not. They're two separate events because they're two separate
Mm-hmm.
perspectives, two separate people doing two separate things, and we really have to separate those events out
Yeah.
from one
It's
another.
it's your feeling about the event, and it's the other person's feeling about
Exactly.
the event.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. So I absolutely agree. There's a lot of stuff people need to learn about these interpersonal relationships, which is why I'm so excited to hear what it is that you're
Yeah.
doing and how you're doing it. So, tell me a little bit more. So, what's the engagement like usually for people to work with you? Do they work in groups, in pairs, individually with you? What kind of relationships do they work on? How long does that engagement last? Tell me a little bit more about your coaching program.
Oh, wonderful. So we usually work on one, but I do have capacity for a group program. It would be a lot of fun to have a group together, but usually one on one. And what we do is we work really hard at understanding our feelings and expressing them in a clear, concise, kind manner. So when your feelings come up about something like being rejected, you're going to have a strong feeling about something. We look for the belief that being rejected or someone saying no to you means the end of the world. Usually it feels like that. We look for why does that happen and bring it all the way to the front and look at what happens that makes you believe that if this one person says no, then you will never make friends again. We'll look at that and we'll actually stress test it. So with me though, with me in a safe environment, and we'll talk about that. We'll do a bit of role play. So I do a 12-week coaching program. It's pretty intensive because I'm always talking to you. The kind of transformation that I'm talking about where you go from not being able to share your feelings, you're not even knowing what your feelings are, to being able to have conversation with strangers and steer them towards topics that are interesting, important to you. You know that your values are real and they're true. Your feelings are valid, you're real and true. And you're capable of connecting with anyone that you want as long as you're being yourself. Going from that kind of transformation to being afraid to be seen to wanting to be seen by the right people and making that happen is time consuming. And so we talk to each other quite a bit throughout our 12 weeks. So although we do have a 1 week, every week we have a video to watch, then we have an assignment, but we also talk outside of that too, because we have those feelings, like I'm saying, like we were saying here, Felix, feelings are everything. And as soon as you have a feeling and you know what it is or you don't know what it is, we need to process it. And I'll give you some tools to help you figure out what to do the next step.
Yeah. That's so awesome. What is the? So I'm curious now. What does your clientele usually consist of? Are these
Oh, yeah.
mostly, again, females, males, younger people, older people? Are these career-driven people? Are they just average Joe schmoes? Are these high school students? Like, who are the people that you work with the most often? And maybe as a second question, who are the people you prefer to work with? Maybe who are your ideal clients who should reach out?
Oh, yes. So my ideal clients or people who usually contact me are those who are probably 30 and upward. Those are the people I say that I've worked with the most, so 30 to 50 ish, because they didn't learn, the things that I also didn't learn. And they're around my age. I'm 41. They're around my age thinking, wow, my relationship isn't working out. I don't know why my friends aren't talking to me. I don't understand how come I can't make friends and I'm an adult and I have all this autonomy. I don't know what to do. So those are the people that come to me. They come to me for friendships, interpersonal relationships, but you usually get a really great understanding of themselves. So they come to me to get friendships and relationships with coworkers and with family members, but they really get an understanding of themselves a lot more. And so I do have a family program for family members. But I start with the friendship first. So I have an exclusive, if you're struggling with your family, because it's a lot more emotionally intense when you're talking to your family members about your needs, wants, and desires. But it's
Yes.
practice. I tell people it's practice to start talking to strangers. Talk to strangers, talk to the friends that you have, open up just a little bit more. So we work with all kinds of relationships. But I generally work with people who've had a bit life experience, and so they can reflect on their past. They've tried a few things. They've tried making friends this way. They've tried growing that way. So I would say 30 and up are usually the people that I work with.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And I can relate to that. I'm 40 right now, and like I said, me being raised was under the same circumstances of not being taught how to have good interpersonal relationships. Right. This is all stuff I
Hmm.
had to pick up on my own and learn on my own over the years, which is why I think coaching is so powerful because it can really shortcut your route to success. But especially if you find the right coach that you vibe with, that you really have a good connection with, and you can listen to them and be in tune with them, that could really shortcut your route to success. So that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Especially, and I would say we have a bit of an advantage. I mean, therapists, a lot of people who come to me, actually, everyone who's worked with me has been to a therapist.
Mm,
They get that emotional understanding, but we get to give them actionable steps as a
yes.
coach. You're like, say, okay, now do this, now try this. Where the therapist isn't really able to tell them exactly what to do and how to do it, but they do give them tools for a bit of self discovery. So I would say also my clients have been through therapy and we complement each other, coaches and therapists. We complement each other, especially in this space, because they have an emotional capacity piece and we have the actual actionable steps.
Yeah. No, that's so awesome. What I want to do now, sort of turn the conversation back on you a little bit. I wrote a simple networking tool book some time ago, and it does the all the work for you. It's a book of questions that you give to
Nice.
another person. They fill it out, answer the questions, just like an old friendship journal. But instead of giving it back to you, they actually give it to someone else who then fills out the questions, and then they give it to someone else, to someone else, to someone else. And so the book does all the networking for you, and it's just a fun little social science experiment that I started. But I want to ask you some questions out of that to learn a little bit more about who Coach Lee Hopkins really is. And so
Yeah.
the first question I'm actually curious about is I know you're in Chicago. Is that right?
Right.
Yes. So uh, fellow Midwesterner, but what is a place you haven't been to yet but really want to visit?
In Chicago or just in general?
World in general.
Oh, okay. Japan. Japan is the place that I want to go to. When Pokemon came here when I was in sixth grade, I was absolutely obsessed and I really enjoyed it. And then I went to college to learn more about Japanese language, and I studied for a little bit. And I just never went. I still eat like different foods, and I've been studying Japanese here and there, but I still haven't gone. I really would like to go to older Japan, the Kyoto, to see some of the historical buildings, the gold leaves on the rooftops. I think it would just be absolutely fun. Tea ceremonies, talking to people. Even though I may stick out like a sore thumb, I really want to enjoy that culture.
Yeah. You're the not the first person to mention Japan, and I'll get back to that in a few minutes. Let me ask you the next question first.
Yeah.
Who or what is your source of inspiration?
Who is my source of inspiration? Um,
Yeah, it could be who or what. It could be like a book or a quote or a spirit animal.
a spirit animal. I'm struggling to think about the source of inspiration, inspired to be connected to people, because that's all I can think about is my desire to want to learn more about myself and to connect with others, learn more about them, curiosity. But I've struggled to put on one particular item
Yeah.
or event. Yeah.
No, no, but that curiosity is so important. I mean, that's what Einstein even said, right? I have no special talents. I'm just naturally curious.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what the essence of humanity should be all about: is us being curious about one another, and being open so that we can be vulnerable and learn not just about each other but from each other. I think
Yeah.
that's the important thing, because none of us know everything.
Right.
Even if we
Yeah.
think we do, we don't.
I know enough to know that I don't know everything. So,
Yes, right.
yes.
Yeah, I always say the more I learn, the less I know.
Wow.
So I can totally relate to that. All right, the next question is a fun question. It's the weirdest question I've ever asked, but that's why I keep asking it, because it's just such a fun question. Would you rather have a dog that meows or a cat that barks?
I would go with a dog that meows. Now it'd be wild, and I was like, oh my goodness, where is that cat? Where is that cat? So, I want to put a little stipulations on it. I want to make sure my dog is small so that I can pet it like a cat,
There you go.
like one of those little lap dogs, like a Chihuahua, just like
Yes.
meow. Yeah. So that would be a something to get used to, but I want to try and put it as close to that what is familiar to me as possible.
Yes, I think it was Scott Raven. I don't remember for sure, but somebody said it was a dat or a cog. just reversing the letters on dog and cat to put them together. So I guess you would want a dat.
Dat. I want
Right.
dat.
All right. This next question comes to you from the previous guest, who was Nathaniel Hovsepian. And Nathaniel himself said he wanted to go to Japan. So I wanted to bring that full circle to you. So the interesting thing about these questions that these guests pay forward to one another is the question tends to be posed to the right person. I don't know how this works out, right? I don't plan this out. You put yourself on my calendar for these podcast episodes. I have no control over who the next recording is with. The only thing I have control over is asking you the question. And it's fascinating. More often than not, the question always gets asked to the perfect person to answer it. So Nathaniel wanted to know, once your time on this earth is done, what do you want to be remembered for by those who you will have left behind? So once your time on this earth is done, what do you want to be remembered for by those who you will have left behind?
Oh, wow. I want to be remembered for my fun and excitement when it comes to playing board games with others. My curiosity, that just seems to be a really big theme in my life, is I want people to feel heard, understood, appreciated, and accepted. And so when they're talking to me, I want them to remember that feeling. I want them to
Yeah,
remember that when they're talking to me, they're the most important thing that's happening ever right now because you have my focus and attention. And I want them to be able to remember that from me.
that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
And it brings out back that joy that you had mentioned previously, right? That joy in the board games and just having fun with life and the community and the curiosity. I mean, it really ties those board games. Really, I can see how they tie
Yeah.
everything important in your life together. So that really is beautiful. Well, listen, it is now your time to pay it forward to the next guest, not knowing who that person is, what we're talking about, or what it is that they even do in life. But what question would you like to leave behind for the next guest on the show?
My question for the next guest would be, what relationship do you cherish the most?
Okay.
I'd be
What
curious to
relationship?
know, what relationship do you cherish the most? And that's a wide open question. It could be the ones with the family members. It could be ones with a school teacher. It taught them something that, just helped them grow so much.
Yeah.
But what relationship do you cherish the most?
I think it's a beautiful question. I There's definitely certain threats going through my head right now in terms of which relationships I cherish the most. So I won't give it away. We'll wait
Yeah.
for the next guest to have
I
that
was looking
discussion.
like intensely. Oh, you're going to share?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, no, I don't want to. I don't want to give away too much before the next guest. So that's awesome. Listen, this is fantastic. You're an incredible individual. How can people reach out to you? How can they connect? How can they work with you if they so desire?
Yes, you can reach me at patternsofpossibility.com. That's my official website. I'm also on all the social media: LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. You can find me on Reddit as well. Just search for Patterns of Possibility. And I also go live 3 days a week and I talk about those connections on this board back here. I draw out the concepts so that you're not just listening to me, but you're also able to see and understand these concepts that I talk about with relationships. I go live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok 3 days a week. So you can find me out there, ask me questions. I'm always happy to answer. I also have a podcast as well, Patterns of Possibility. So I'm out there trying to share as much information about connection and community as possible.
Yeah, and I'll make sure all those links are in the description below so anybody can just click on it and connect with you more readily. That's awesome. Any last final words from you to the world today?
I just want to thank you so much, Felix, for your wonderful questions. I've been on a lot of different podcasts, and I appreciate the challenging pushback and the thoughtful probing to the questions because it does bring out something. It is curiosity that's coming out. And so, what a demonstration. So, I just want
Yes.
to thank you for that.
No, truly, the honor is mine for you to be here. It is an incredibly amazing conversation. I got so much out of it. My head is still spinning about some of the stuff we talked about, and I know I have to look at this episode a few more times while I edit it. And so, I'm really looking forward to edits and looking at it again and listening to it and really trying to integrate some of this content into my own life. So, again, thank you for taking the time for being here today and participating in this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me again.